How was the minute by minute of the Virginia Tech attack? What made this individual able to attack 2 people without being stopped 2 hours before starting the raid? What was the personality of the perpetrator, and what was the psychiatric diagnosis that became known after the attack? Is it true that a Columbine survivor was involved 8 years later in this terrible event? In this report, we'll discuss that and many other topics. The Virginia Tech attack was a tragic event that occurred at the Virginia Polytechnic Institute and State University in Blacksburg, Virginia, United States, the institution which housed more than 30,000 students. It was the scene of what, to this day, is considered the largest student attack ever perpetrated in the country's history. The unfortunate event shocked the world, once again focusing on debates about gun ownership laws and mental health, especially as the days went by, when it would be discovered that the attacker had an alarming psychiatric diagnosis. The attack consisted of 2 phases. The first phase ended with 2 fatalities, but what no one would suspect is that he would return to claim many more victims in a mass shooting. That morning, 23-year-old student Seung-Hui woke up early in her room. She quickly left and set out to find her first victim. Having accomplished her goal, she had time to return home, make the final preparations, and visit the post office before returning to unleash the horror on April 16, 2007. The day there was an attack at Virginia Tech. Before we start with the events at Virginia Tech, please comment below if you are familiar with this story. How did you find out? If you experienced it at that time? If you saw it in the media? And what do you think about the attitude of this shooter? If this video surpasses 5,000 likes in 24 hours, we will continue with the school shooting saga on the day we already have. The one about Columbine, which did very well, is almost reaching 1 million views, and this is the second one. If we surpass 5,000 likes, we will prepare a third video with this theme on this channel, so leave your like below. Let's begin. In March of 2007, the student Seung-Hui entered a store in Roanoke, a city relatively close to his residence. The purchase process was simple. The seller only asked for a driver's license, checkbook, and the green card for permanent legal residence. Upon verifying that he had no criminal record, he sold him for $571, what the young man had come to look for: a 9mm Glock pistol with its respective ammunition. The state of Virginia does not allow the purchase of more than 1 firearm per month, so the shooter was quite patient. In early April, he went for more. This time he acquired a Walther P22 caliber online. For a couple of days, he did what many boys his age do, taking posing photos and recording videos. Only these photos and videos were not as common as those of boys his age. Carrying the firearms he had obtained, a knife and even a hammer, he posed in military attire. In several photographs, in some threateningly, in others smiling and even pointing a gun directly at his forehead. At the same time, he anonymously called his university and threatened to plant a bomb in the building. Then, calculating every detail, he also wrote several documents expressing his ideas and emotions. He even went so far as to call 2 young men, well known for perpetrating a brutal massacre years earlier, Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, martyrs. Then he put all the material in a package ready to send it later. The message in one of the videos was blunt: you had millions of opportunities and ways to prevent what was going to happen today, but you chose to spill my blood. You cornered me and gave me only one option, the 16th of that month. The students of Virginia Tech would know the meaning of those words. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Before knowing what he meant by these phrases and what happened at Virginia Tech, better to start from the beginning. Seung-Hui Lee Cho was born in 1984 in South Korea. When he was 8 years old, his family emigrated to the United States and settled in Centerville, Virginia, where they opened a dry cleaning business. In high school, the young man was diagnosed with major depressive disorder and selective mutism, an anxiety disorder in which affected individuals stop speaking in certain social contexts even though they do so fluently in others. April 20th, 1999. While Cho was in 8th grade, one of the biggest school massacres to date occurred, that of Columbine High School. Upon hearing the news, the boy made his first alarming statement. He expressed the need to repeat the fact. In 2003, after graduating from high school, Cho enrolled at Virginia Tech as an information technology student. Soon after, he switched to English literature. At 23 years old, he was in his final year at university, endowed with an above-average intelligence quotient. The young man was described by those who knew him as a quiet and solitary person, who even did not respond to the greetings of others. He simply ignored them as if nothing had happened. In addition to his diagnosed severe autism, he was unaccustomed to being treated well. On the contrary, he was the object of ridicule from many of his peers, who dedicated themselves to laughing at him and even went so far as to physically assault him. The focus of most of these abuses was one, xenophobia. The Asian origin of the student was a cause of annoyance for some of his peers and added to his limited command of English. The whole scenario was set for the aggressors to continually mock. Even on one occasion, during a class where Cho couldn't manage to read a text aloud, they yelled at him to go back to China. He also had the reputation of being a weirdo, and his strange behaviors did not help to placate it. This, on the contrary, grew considerably when they asked other students to call him ? That is, a question mark. Or on those occasions when he claimed to have a relationship with a young woman who lived in space. Even so, some young people tried to socialize with him, but the result was always the same. They withdrew unsuccessfully, convinced the South Korean didn't want friends. Cho remained apart from the rest most of the time, finding refuge in activities he liked, such as basketball or movies. He showed a special fascination for Korean film, Old Boy, by Park Chang-wook, where the protagonist starts a bloody massacre to take revenge on society. And it wasn't the only thing he had developed an unhealthy fixation for. He also became obsessed with 2 university students, to the point of harassing them through vulgar emails and phone calls. One of them, tired of the situation, decided to go to the police, but no investigation was opened, and the victims chose not to press charges. Still, this behavior was not isolated. On one occasion even, the young man's poetry teacher requested his expulsion upon discovering that he was photographing his classmates' legs during classes. Finally, Seung-Hui was able to get a girl to have a romantic relationship with him, the 18-year-old student Emily Jane Hilshire. This only worsened the young man's attitude, as he also became an absolutely controlling, jealous, and possessive person. Despite his hermit-like character, he showed certain signs of aggression. Even on one occasion, he showed this trait when he sparked a small incident in which he set fire to a trash can in his room. Some people's alarm bells went off when, in addition to what was narrated, they noticed the violence that appeared in these writings. In the writing class, one of the activities aimed at evaluating the students among themselves, and for this, the young people read the literary exercises of their classmates. Ian McFarlane, a former classmate of Cho, was one of the first to notice that the boys' stories were much like a nightmare. Sinister, morbid scenes filled with violence prevailed, in many of which weapons played a major role. He wasn't the only one to notice. The South Korean's English teacher, Lucinda Roy, informed the institution's authorities and the police about her suspicions. The young man was definitely dangerous, and she could tell from the texts he wrote. One of them was a play titled Richard Macbeef. It was starred by an individual named John, a 13-year-old teenager full of anger who had conflicts with the aforementioned Richard, his stepfather. At a certain point in the story, the adult tried to hit him, but John's mother intervened by attacking her partner after her son accused him of abusing him. While the fights were happening, the young man thought about killing the man. At the same time, he was throwing darts full of hate at a picture of him. Finally, it was the boy who ended up being killed by his stepfather after a fatal blow. In another story, titled Mr. Brownstone, John was in a casino with his 2 companions. The 3 boys were talking while accusing one of their teachers, Mr. Brownstone, of being a pedophile, and even mentioned that he had abused them until they bled. They openly expressed their desires to murder him on several occasions, with phrases full of violence. The students ended up winning the jackpot. of $5 million. But the professor convinced the casino management that they had actually stolen that winning ticket from him. After some effort, Mr. Brownstone succeeded in having the casino eject the teens and award him the prize. The disturbing nature of the writings powerfully caught the teacher's attention, to the point that she decided that Cho would no longer participate in group classes. She opted to educate him in a specific manner. She also advised the confused student to seek psychiatric help, after emphatically pointing out that what he was writing was unacceptable. For Lucinda, the student was an extremely intelligent boy, but also absolutely disturbed. April 16, 2007. In the worst way, it would be shown that she was not wrong, and this is how our story returns to the beginning. Around 7 in the morning of that day, Cho arrived at West Amber Johnston Hall of Virginia Tech, a co-ed university residence. He was able to enter without much difficulty, went up to the 4th floor, entered room 4040, and once there, shot his ex-girlfriend, the aforementioned Emily Hersher, seriously injuring her. The student Ryan Clark heard the shots and tried to help the young woman, receiving a bullet impact at that moment that caused his death. After these attacks, the aggressor returned to his room. There. He spent some time changing his clothes, erasing the content of his hard drive and email, and rearming himself. He even recorded himself using a digital camera. He then put 27 video files and 43 photos on a digital versatile disc, and he put it in a plastic box, to which he added a pre-printed manifesto of 1,800 words. He got up from his desk, but not before leaving an 8-page note, complaining about the rich kids on campus, about libertinism, and about the lying chatter of the professors, among other grievances that included misogynistic epithets, references to being constantly bullied, and attacks on Christianity. He even declared himself a defender of the weak and defenseless. The note was signed as Ismail Axe, translated as Ismail Hatchet or the Hatchet of Ismail. On one of his arms, moreover, he carried that enigmatic inscription in red ink, the color used in Korea to write the names of deceased people. While Cho was engaged in these activities, the police had been informed of the shooting at West Amber Johnston Hall. After the detectives arrived at the scene, a first suspect was considered, Carl Thornhill, Emily's new boyfriend. They quickly arrested and handcuffed the student to interrogate him. However, classes at Virginia Tech started at 8 a.m. as usual. They had pointed out the wrong young man, and the real shooter was about to unleash hell. Oh, no more. Cho walked to the campus post office and at 9:01 ante-meridium sent the package that he had previously prepared for the National Broadcasting Company newsroom. Then he headed towards Norris Hall, the building that housed the Engineering Science and Mechanics program. Once there, he took some chains out of his backpack and from the inside blocked the 3 main entrances to the hall. The objective was quite clear. He wanted to prevent people from escaping. Putting the second part of his plan into action, he entered room 206 of the Engineering Career Building, took out his weapons and opened fire. First, he killed the professor and then shot most of the students, murdering 9 in the process. Immediately afterwards, he crossed the hallway to room 207, where he also killed the professor and 2 other students. At this stage, several of the students who were nearby heard the shots and ran to block the entrances to their classrooms. That's how the shooter, as he advanced towards room 204 and found the door obstructed, chose to shoot through it. Professor Liviu Librescu had managed to cheat death years before, when he survived a Nazi extermination camp during the Holocaust. But on this occasion, death would find him holding the door of his classroom in a desperate attempt to buy his students time to escape by jumping out the windows, and he was on the verge of accomplishing his mission perfectly. Unfortunately, the last of the young people who remained in this room did not manage to escape in time and was killed by the shooter when he managed to enter it. After leaving the room, Cho forced his way into 211, killing the teacher and student blocking the entrance. There he killed 10 more students and injured several others. Then he returned to rooms 206 and 207, killing 2 young people in the first and injuring 2 others in the second. When trying to enter 205, he found the door blocked by a large desk. Fortunately for those inside, he quickly gave up and everyone was able to stay safe. A professor from the upper floor was not so lucky. Upon leaving his class to investigate the source of the shots, he became the shooter's last victim. Finally, the attacker re-entered room 211. After 9 minutes of terror, he ended his massacre by shooting himself in the head with both weapons. Seung-Hui Cho became the 33rd death of this shooting, which also left 29 injured and an entire country in mourning. The injured people were taken to nearby hospitals, several of them in critical condition. Due to the poor weather conditions from the strong winds in the area, helicopters could not be used for the rescue and instead ambulances had to be employed. The next day, a tribute was held for the victims at the Virginia Tech Sports Complex with a strong security system in place. 10,000 students attended to honor their peers, and even then President George W. Bush was present, accompanied by his wife, Laura. During the ceremony, he stated that it was a day of mourning for the Virginia community and for the nation as a whole. The distressed young people cried and hugged each other, while the bodies of the victims were spread out in 4 rooms. A state of emergency was declared in Virginia, and Governor Tim Kaine announced a thorough, independent investigation. The flags in Virginia were lowered to half-mast as a sign of mourning, and later the White House ordered the same to be done, keeping it that way until Sunday night. Several other cities in the country extended their respects and declared themselves in mourning. The university cancelled classes for the rest of the week and expressly asked that visitors not affiliated with the institution refrain from visiting the campus. It also closed the Norris Hall building, the pavilion where the mass attack occurred, for the rest of the semester. For his part, Charles Steger, the school president, commented in the first press conference that the school shooting took the authorities by surprise. They had believed that the first shots that claimed the lives of Emily and Ryan were the result of a domestic dispute. They were sure that the attacker had left the campus. Virginia Tech offered therapeutic support and assistance for students and staff of the institution, also installing a crisis treatment unit. The Red Cross joined the initiative, sending numerous professionals who provided containment and helped the traumatized students in the recovery process. Several witnesses gave statements. Among them, a young woman named Tina Harrison, who commented she heard horrible screams of agony, followed by a maniacal laugh during the first minutes of the shooting. Another student, Sebastian Hoyos, revealed that the attacker lined up the victims and asked them if they knew where his girlfriend was before shooting them. For his part, Ian McFarlane, the crashmate, had noticed the sinister nature of his writings. He expressed that upon hearing about the shooting at Virginia Tech, his first thought was about the well-being of his friends, immediately followed by another very dark one, the certainty that it had been Seung-Hui. Concerns also arose as the days went by. Korean students in the United States expressed fear of possible reprisals. They were afraid of being persecuted or intimidated because of the shooter's nationality. The then president of Korea, Roh Moo-hyun, expressed being indescribably shocked by the fact that the tragic murder was caused by a South Korean. The attacker's sister, Sun Kyun, publicly apologized on behalf of the family through a statement, deeply regretting the devastation her brother had caused. She assured that her heart was broken and that while Seung-Hui was quiet and reserved, he always tried to fit in, guaranteeing that they could never have glimpsed the violence he was capable of. In June 2008, Virginia authorities reached an agreement with relatives of 24 of the victims, and they received $11 million in compensation. Over time, some investigations revealed chilling data, like a psychiatric diagnosis that many had ignored. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, translated as the National Instant Criminal Background Check System. A background check for potential buyers of weapons or explosives. Sellers must refer to this before completing the transaction. The National Instant Criminal Background Check System contains a database that identifies people convicted of drug addiction, those who do not have or renounced United States citizenship, or those who were dishonorably discharged from the military. It also reviews national files to identify potential fugitives from justice. to deported citizens or those convicted of crimes, and to people who have been interned in psychiatric institutions. And Seung-Hui was part of one of these groups, although he was free of criminal records. Some investigations revealed that the young man had been admitted to a psychiatric institution and had been declared mentally ill, and an imminent danger to others by a court. That same year, in fact, the police had received a call from a relative of Cho expressing their fear that the young man might try to take his own life. His diagnosis became known after the massacre: schizophrenia, paranoid, bipolar disorder, psychopathy, and more mental disorders, which were added to his already known severe autism. They also believed that he could have suffered abuse and mistreatment in his home. While the data released by the authorities did not give a specific answer about the motives for the massacre, they made it clear that the shooter had evaded the controls established by the United States to prevent criminals or dangerous people from accessing firearms. And the legal loopholes in this control system are atrocious, and the laws of this country only require checks for properly registered stores. This leaves sales made through other means, such as the internet, fairs, private sellers, or even those stores that operate despite irregularities without any kind of supervision. In this way, individuals disqualified by the NYX managed to easily get hold of ammunition or weapons. Of course, there was also a lot of speculation about the killer's motives for carrying out this shooting. As time went on and more details came to light, there was much speculation about the motives the young South Korean could have had for perpetrating the sinister attack. A Fox News columnist even seriously suggested that the attacker could have acted under the influence of the devil. The theory of Dr. Dolores Malaspina, director of the Department of Psychiatry at the New York University School of Medicine. She pointed to a toxic substance that can cause schizophrenia, perchloroethylene. They believed that Cho could have been affected by prolonged exposure to this compound in his parents' dry cleaning business. The vice president of relations at Virginia Tech indicated that the perpetrator of the massacre was a loner, which made it difficult to gather information about him. As stated by Kenna Quinnett, a criminal law professor at Purdue University in India. That same loneliness is a typical characteristic of mass murderers, men who tend to feel isolated and resentful towards society. But the strongest theory points to the discrimination and bullying suffered by the young man, given his shyness and his status as a foreigner. The constant abuse, along with prior disorders, likely triggered it. Again, and as a result of this attack, the debate on the sale of firearms in the country was reopened throughout the United States. And the safety in educational centers? As is usual in this controversy, advocates for stricter measures claimed their argument that violence would decrease if the sale was not such a simple matter. While on the other side, they argued that a gun owner could stop or disarm an attacker. At this point, while it continues to be a serious and urgent problem, school shootings in the United States are an issue that hardly surprises anyone anymore. They are so common that in fact there was a case of a girl who was involved in 2 shootings. Regina Rhode was a student at Columbine High School in 1999. The rest is known history. Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold, armed to the teeth, stormed into the institution and caused the death of 12 students and a teacher. Regina was at that moment in the cafeteria, the first place, where the young men attacked when they started the massacre. Fortunately, she was able to leave the place and managed to escape from the building, but she couldn't escape from the memories. With psychiatric treatment to cope with this situation, it took her 2 years to stop feeling that anyone could attack her at any time and everywhere. In an interview, she said she never fully regained peace or safety, but could at least return to her normal life, without constantly looking around in case someone was trying to harm her. Amid her post-traumatic stress, she decided to distance herself from these memories and find some tranquility, going to study at Virginia Tech. And 8 years later, in a scenario worthy of a movie script, she had to repeat the story. Although she was not in the direct line of fire, the student was in the building when Cho Seung-Hui began the attacks, and her reaction, along with her classmates, made her relive her experience in Columbine. Screams, confusion, and the same questions about what to do, where to go, or who was injured. Once again, Regina Roth managed to cheat death and left a categorical message for National Broadcasting Company. Media coverage does not allow victims to understand the magnitude of what they experienced. He assured that by constantly sneaking cameras into the places where they gathered, the students did not give them the time or space they needed to support each other as a community. And she asked for herself and her colleagues that they respect something essential: their space. The Virginia Tech massacre once again put the focus on gun control, the safety in educational spaces, psychological well-being, and the way violence is addressed and prevented. Tim Kaine, the aforementioned governor of Virginia, convened a panel made up of officials and specialists to investigate the management and response to problems associated with shootings. In their final report, they criticized the teachers and health professionals who were in contact with Cho for not having responded effectively to the deterioration of his state. At the same time, they criticized privacy and gun laws. The university authorities were accused of negligence, given the lack of measures taken in the 2 hours that elapsed between the first and second shooting. In fact, many students attended classes relaxed after that first incident, with the peace of mind that had been given to them by informing them that everything was under control. The Virginia Tech massacre is just a fateful reminder, among many others, of a problem that persists in today's society and for which a remedy has not yet been found: gun violence and the challenges involving mental health. That concludes the Virginia Tech video. I hope you found it interesting. If so, please leave a like. I remind you that if we exceed 5,000 likes in 24 hours, I will prepare a third chapter on school shootings on this channel. On the day I invite you to watch, the one about Columbine, if you haven't seen it yet, it's doing very well. People liked it, so that's why we prepared this second part. And also leave suggestions about which case we can cover on this channel. With nothing more to say, I bid farewell. I'm Magnum Ephisto, and we'll certainly meet again in the next video of the day.